Well, hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to my YouTube channel, the Joe Chaffee Weather Show, which is starting a little later than usual tonight at 7:30 Eastern Time. We had quite a run of severe weather this evening. Kind of reminded me of what happened here last Monday, and I've got a few radar shots to show you. We had kind of a strange coincidence that occurred. I was actually inside the studio where I could hear the thunder going on outside, and we had the alarms go off, and I thought it was set off by the thunderstorms. The thunder was so loud. So we had to evacuate the building. And the firemen came, and we couldn't go back inside. So we were out in the, just not out in the pouring rain and in the thunderstorm itself. But I have to tell you, the lightning and thunder that was coming out of this thunderstorm, I haven't seen a thunderstorm like this in quite a while. I have a video that I put up on Facebook. It's a short 3-minute video on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Go ahead and take a look at it. Joe Rayo jumped in with me. It was pretty frightening out there, but it was weird because if it wasn't for the fire alarm going off, I probably would not have been out there to experience it. So we're going to talk about the thunderstorms that we had that moved through the Northeast tonight, particularly in the areas from Philadelphia to New York City and also into New England. We have the tropics, where we have Hurricane Erik, Tropical Storm Flossie, which actually was a hurricane but has weakened, and I'll show you what's happened. There's some wind shear going on with Flossie. The weakening may be temporary. And we also have a tropical wave out in the Atlantic that the Hurricane Center has now upped the chances for it developing over the weekend to 60% chance. And I want to go through that and show you a couple of things as far as that system is concerned, because now with August starting tomorrow, the hurricane hysterics will begin on social media, so that anytime a weather model shows a hurricane approaching land in the long range, you can be sure you'll find that image plastered somewhere on social media with the lines attached to it indicating that this isn't a forecast. Well, if it's not a forecast, why put it up to begin with? But of course, to stoke the usual fear. So we're going to try to keep it real around here, as we always do. So let's start with tonight's severe weather, which has already passed its peak and is winding down, thankfully. But I have a shot of the radar loop just as the peak of the storms were going on, and the storms that I was sitting in. So the first frame that you see here on the Weather Service radar, where you see all those reds just north of New York City, that's where I was in southern Westchester County under those cells. And there were some really powerful storms that rolled through, also through parts of central New Jersey, particularly in Ocean and Burlington counties. We had a big cell in Monmouth County producing flash flooding. Earlier this afternoon, there was some severe thunderstorms in and around the Philadelphia area. The strong storms then moved their way up into Connecticut. Now, this is the older loop, and the last frame on this, the first frame is from 4:15. The last frame is from about 5:15. So the current shot, which I will freshen up for you, hang on. And there, by the way, you may notice this was at 6. The picture that you're seeing here was at 6:30 when we had big storms rolling offshore the Jersey coast. And now on the latest radar, much of the activity has really diminished. Now, there are still a few downpours, and there might be a cell that's firing up south of Allentown. So there's still a bit more energy to get through. But I think the worst of it is over with as far as the area from New Jersey into Connecticut. Now, there's also still some action going on to the south. I don't know if it was a lightning strike somewhere, but there are frames missing on a lot of the Weather Service loop data, be it the satellites, the radars. So I'm not using the loops. I'm instead losing the still shots because they've come back. There's some very strong storms from the Delmarva Peninsula across the Tidewater into Virginia, south of Richmond. You can see them here. Again, this is as of 7. This radar shot is from 7:22, and we have a couple of working severe thunderstorm and marine warnings there. And if you're watching this on a replay, please bear that in mind, that you're seeing dated radar information. So be sure to go to your local National Weather Service forecast page to check the latest weather information regarding severe weather, and you can get that by going to weather.gov. I'm going to run up further to the north. The action in New England has calmed down considerably. There were some strong storms early in the afternoon that came into western New England, but again, much of the activity now has diminished. So the worst of this is over with, thankfully. I don't think the national radar is back up. Let me see if I can pull that up. No, you see how okay, the last frames are there. So there's missing data, but you can see what's left of the storms in the east. You've got some showers up just off the coast of Maine, off the New Jersey coast, down across the Delmarva, as we said, into southeastern Virginia. And then it kind of tails off after that, some scattered showers and storms down through the interior of the Carolinas. Got some solid action going on in Florida, from Tampa south to about Naples, and then extending inland, some strong thunderstorms there. Got a little arc of storms moving southeast from Iowa into Missouri, some scattered activity going on up in the Rockies. So let's shift gears. I want to jump over to Hurricane Erik first off, and Erik is as of the last advisory, which was 11 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time or 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Top winds 115 miles an hour, so still a Category 3, but it is definitely weakened from its peak intensity that we had yesterday at 14.8 north, 148.8 west. So from where it is now, it's roughly, I would say, a little less, about 400 or so miles, or maybe a little less than 400 or so miles southeast of the Big Island of Hawaii, moving on a west-northwest course at about 14, and it keeps it pretty steady. Actually, the tracks have been subtly shifting a little bit further to the south, and as a result, based on today's forecast, and if you remember yesterday, we showed you the water temperature map in and around Hawaii, that you need to keep the storm south of 16 north to have favorable water temperatures to maintain a Category 2, a Category 1 or a Category 2 hurricane. And the slight shifting south is the reason why the intensity of the storm on the forecast is being held to a bit longer. So they actually have it as a hurricane, the Hurricane Center does, at 8 a.m. Friday when it makes its closest pass to the Big Island. So if this were correct, the center of the hurricane would pass about a little, maybe around or just slightly less than 200 miles south of the southernmost tip of the Big Island of Hawaii, and then gradually weakening as a tropical storm as it moves westward. There's a strong upper high to the north that's been kind of keeping this on this solid west-northwest course, and we've been seeing that the models themselves have been too far north for the last several days, and the adjustments have had to be made by shifting this off to the south. Similar adjustments with Flossie and the Hurricane Center as of 11 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time at 14 north, 127.3 west, with top winds of 70 miles an hour, and it has weakened. Now, if you look at their forecast, the Flossie is forecast to strengthen back into a hurricane late Thursday and hold on to hurricane status into Sunday. And on its current track, even though it weakens to a tropical storm by 8 a.m. Monday, it is forecast to come very close to the Hawaiian Islands based on what we're looking at now. But please bear in mind, we're 5 days, 5 days out here to get to Monday. So that's a long way from now with respect to the forecast. So there still could be, some room for error here. And you see the let's call it the cone of uncertainty and the possible range of where the storm might be per the Hurricane Center. But this idea of a west-northwest course where the track has been a little bit further south with every weather model run makes a lot of sense, because it appears that the ridge to the north, the ridge of high pressure across the Pacific, is stronger than what's been modeled. So here's a look on the satellite. Now I want you to look at two things specifically. First off, with respect to Erik, obviously it's still fairly well defined, but does not look as well as it did yesterday when we had that very obvious pinprick eye. Excuse me for 1 second, folks. Having a little bit of a tough time breathing here in the studio, which happens from time to time when the outside air is not getting in. But it still has that circular look to it, but it does. It is beginning to take on a slightly more ragged appearance. So clearly we are past its peak intensity, and you'll see its perspective to the Hawaiian Islands, which are to the northwest. The clouds to the north, you see those low clouds that are out in the Pacific, those are moving from east to west that's where you have the cooler, the very cool waters of the Pacific extend pretty far south, down almost to 20 degrees north. But in reality, when I'm talking about the really cool water, it's mostly from 25 degrees latitude northward. And those clouds are moving east to west. So there's a fairly strong ridge here that's pushing both these storms along. Now take a look at Flossie and watch what happens there in the latter stages of the frame of the loop. And I have a tight loop, so you'll see it better. But the center of the circulation, which is under the bright white clouds at the beginning of the loop, and you see that center comes out. It's exposed. It's wind shear has exposed the circulation center, as you're getting some of these thunderstorms getting blown away by some stronger winds in the upper atmosphere. They look like those winds are blowing from the southwest. So this wind shear issue is going to impact the system by keeping it just under hurricane strength. Now, as it gets a bit further to the west in another day or two, it will be in a zone where there'll be less shear again. So it's likely, at least to the hurricane center, is likely that it'll strengthen back into a hurricane. The only thing is, sometimes when these systems get sheared apart, if the shearing really gets out of hand, then it's kind of hard to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. But I'll defer to them because they look at all their stuff. And over the last several years, forecasts of intensity have gotten better with respect to handling the shear issue. So they're thinking that this will probably re-strengthen again as it gets a little bit further west and out of this area of strong wind shear. But take a look at Erik on the tight satellite loop. Again, very, very hard. You can't even pick out the eye anymore. The eye is completely cloud-filled. You see where 15 degrees north is, so the center is down north of 15 degrees north. But it looks like it's moving more west than anything else, and it's going to definitely pass by a fair distance south of the big island of Hawaii. Now, here's the tight view of Flossie, and you can see the exposed circulation center on this loop. I'm going to add 96 frames to it and go back as far back as we can. So that's probably a little bit much, but okay, there you go. All right, let me cut that in half so you don't have those dark frames. So let's go to 48. Maybe that'll work better. All right, but there's that center. You see how that center is just exposed? Just comes right out of, almost completely out from those big thunderstorms. Now, on the last several frames, you're starting to see thunderstorms flare up once again, right around the east side of the circulation center. So perhaps the shear has reached its peak. Now, here's the I pulled up the upper air on the GFS out in the Pacific for today, and I know it's kind of hard on this wide view, but if you notice on the lower center, there's this what looks like a black dot. Okay, that is Erik, and to the east of that is another not quite black dot. That to the east of that is Flossie, And to the north, you've got this upper high sitting over New Mexico that extends westward out into the Pacific, out from Baja California, all the way to about Hawaii. A bit of a weakness occurs from the western part of the Hawaiian Islands, and then you've got another upper high to the west of that. So Erik will probably respond to that weakness eventually after it passes the Hawaiian Islands, and Flossie to some degree will probably respond to the same weakness as we move along. In fact, there's an upper low that's dropping down from the Gulf of Alaska and dropping southward. So that will eventually probably pull Flossie northward and also put an end to it as far as a cyclone, a tropical cyclone is concerned, because it'll wind up shearing it apart. You can also see, by the way, if you on the lower left is, at least the model seems to be picking up on some kind of developing system. There's a little low there, it looks like a bowling ball that heads towards southern Japan. So that might be a tropical storm, or perhaps even a typhoon. Maybe I'll give it a little bit of a closer look tomorrow. I didn't get a chance to spend a whole lot of time on the maps today because of the fact that we had this severe weather that occurred. Okay, let me hang on. I'm going to try to find. Here's the Hawaii surface. I want to put the surface map up for you. If you're watching from Hawaii, just bear in mind your local forecasters know your area far better than I do with respect to how climate works out there. But here's Erik going by on the GFS model south of the Big Island, and then Flossie on the GFS takes it, just kind of kisses the Big Island there, and then gets deflected off to the northeast as that upper low to the north begins to shear it out. We can take a look also at the Europeans' view, and we'll use this map here. So the European, so there's Erik, about the same idea where it passes south of the Big Islands. I think that's pretty much going to be a done deal here. And there's Flossie coming very close to the Big Island, or just touching or kissing it from the north side. The models are both remarkably consistent. They each have a similar idea. Flossie gets picked up by that trough and moves northward. I don't know how much of a tropical identity it's going to have left as it makes the turn along about 160, while Erik just continues to move along to the west-northwest, and we can say goodbye to Erik. All right, on to the Atlantic side. And I'll use this view, then we'll roll back and watch what happens. So of course we'll come back to the GFS in a moment. I want to take a look on the satellite loop so we can take a look at this tropical wave that has been is out in the eastern Atlantic. It's a fairly large wave. There's a lot of disorganized showers and thunderstorms with it. There's a kind of a circular look to it, but it is definitely not a tropical depression by any means. It is a wave, and conditions still remain pretty unfavorable. If you notice that some of the clouds are kind of moving all over the place, there is still some wind shear going on. It looks like there's also another wave behind it that has moved off the African coast. Now, once this system gets west of about 50 degrees west, conditions there are going to be favorable for some development, and that will happen over the weekend. Looking at some of the upper air models and the upper air profiles of the models, it looks like there'll be an area of light winds aloft that this wave might be able to develop in. So we'll see if that happens. The GFS and the European and Canadian all seem to be trying to do something with it, but I will caution from the standpoint of forecasting that you kind of want to wait for the wave to actually do its thing, and rather than go by the fact that the models are showing what they're showing. They don't often handle the upper air conditions in the tropics very well. There is also, you see, the disturbed weather that's been sitting over Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Haiti for the last couple of days, from disturbed weather that came out of the Eastern Caribbean. That's all blowing pretty much from west to east, so we do have some rather hostile conditions there now, but models seem to be forecasting that by the time that wave makes it to about 50 degrees west or so, that conditions in the upper air will become more favorable for tropical cyclone development. And the disturbance that's over Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic will eventually make its way up into the Bahamas over the weekend. I don't think that that's going to do very much. You got this old frontal boundary that's sitting off the East Coast, the front that's coming through tonight. I think that it'll probably wind up getting absorbed by that, so I'm not really overly bullish with regards to development there. But one of the things I want to show you, though, again, I showed you this last night, and I'm going to be curious to see if we maintain a certain degree of consistency from model run to model run. I think that's going to be very important to keep an eye on, if only because of the fact that the models seem to be very insistent on this idea. If you look at the upper air pattern in the Northeast, down into the mid-Atlantic states, you've got this 585 height line that you can see. I think you can see that fairly well there. That is where the southern edge of the upper air westerly winds are. This is for Saturday morning, where you have a big upper high out in the Atlantic, northeast of Puerto Rico, somewhere that 591 height that goes east to west, that little kinking you see right in the middle of the tropical Atlantic. So that's probably where your wave is. It's responding to that east-west ridge, but notice you've got rather strong westerly winds in the upper layers of the atmosphere that extend pretty far south, down into Florida. You've got southwest winds in the upper atmosphere actually down to the Keys and then running out in the open waters of the Atlantic. It's hard for me to envision how you're going to bring a storm up the East Coast with an upper air pattern like this. So I'm just bringing up the fact that as long as we have this flow, this jet stream flow from Canada, from the northwest that moves, it ebbs and flows, and there seems to be a series of troughs coming into southern Canada during the first week of August, that even if something were to develop, you're going to wind up turning it up and out well off shore. Maybe it would make a closer pass to the islands, but that's hard to say. One of the things I would look for, the other possibility here is if the system stays relatively weak, it might want to take a track further to the west and head up into the eastern Caribbean underneath this upper high. I think there's a possibility that would happen, but if it would have to be if the system doesn't really develop very much. If it stays a weak, if you wind up with a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm with a low-level center that doesn't have a whole lot of depth to it going up the atmosphere, it's down at the low levels, and therefore it'll respond to the low-level steering winds, then you could wind up taking something into the eastern Caribbean. But again, I go back to what I said earlier, which is let's see if it develops first, and then we'll worry about the forecast implications a bit later on. So we know the rules here, folks, with respect to all of this. I know you're going to, everybody's going to look, because it's sort of like, an accident on the highway. Everybody pulls over on both sides, and just as they have to look. Folks are going to be looking at weather models going forward, and I kind of get that. But remember the context, okay? Just because they're on the models, especially in the long range, we don't really take them too seriously until we get inside, at the very least, inside 7 days, and if not, inside 5. Okay, weather, WPC for rain, because I know poor Johnny Quest got hammered today with some big thunderstorms and heavy rains in the mountains of northwestern Virginia. Over the next 7 days, looks like it's typical shower and thunderstorm activity there, with some 1 to 2 inch amounts possible, some heavier amounts in North and South Carolina. You can see from the old frontal boundary that'll be stalled offshore. Heavy rains from central and south Florida, then northeastward out into the open waters of the Atlantic. that boundary is going to persist at least through the weekend. Still got that heavy patch of rain in the plains in eastern Kansas, western Missouri, down into northwestern Arkansas. 1 to 2 inch rainfalls in the Rockies down into the southwest. A little bit of action in the Pacific Northwest. And that's about it. The rest of the lighter to darker greens, you're talking about rainfall amounts of 3/4 of an inch or less. And much of the rainfall for my area is pretty well done with today into tonight. Okay. By the way, I didn't do this. Let me come back. Okay, I forgot. We got our own the local forecast here. Hang on one second. All right, so let's come back to let's just really quickly go through what's going to be happening in the U.S. So ignoring where the models take these tropical storms, please. But there's your jet stream pattern across the U.S. Here's your trough that's going through now. The bulk of it is lifting up to the northeast, to James Bay and Labrador. The southern end kind of gets left behind, so the front stalls along the east coast for a little bit. Still get some troughing that actually drops back down into the Florida Panhandle and into the eastern Gulf. The strengthening jet stream with another shortwave trough swinging through eastern Canada and dropping into northern New England will finally bring in a shot of drier air, I think, for the Northeast for later Sunday into Monday and maybe even into Tuesday. That pulls out, and then here comes another shortwave trough into eastern Canada. You've got those westerly winds down into at least Virginia, actually even into North Carolina, from the flow to the north. That would be protective of anything trying to come up the coast. And now, of course, you're going to see that jet stream just kind of sit there. The European, this is the late afternoon run, which, kind of shifted everything a bit further to the west. I don't know if I want to believe that or not. But look, the bottom line is, as long as you've got this persistent jet here up to the north, it's going to be very hard to take anything up the east coast. Because if one short wave doesn't pick it up, you can see here how the model kind of misses it here, and then the next one comes right along and kicks it up and out. So as long as you've got this fast flow like this, where the troughs, if you were seeing troughs dropping into the Ohio Valley and from there, where the flow along the east coast became more southerly, then we would have a different conversation. But unless something bizarre happens, it's kind of unlikely to see that. We'll probably be more likely to see a trough drop in, like we've seen the last two, or actually more than two. We'll see a trough drop in and turn anything that develops out in the Atlantic and turn it up to the north and northeast and keeping it well offshore. And of course, once again, we are not and never forecast out stuff going out that far in advance. Just kind of just sort of describing what the models are doing here. But as far as we're concerned, the lingering front offshore means for some continuing on and off downpours and thunderstorms from Virginia southwestward into South Carolina into Georgia, and of course you got all this tropical moisture that's moving into Florida. For my neck of the woods, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, I think much of the time the next 3 days should be okay. Might be the odd shower or downpour. The further north you go, I think the drier it will be, and the weather really won't be all that bad. A weather front comes through with that northern shortwave on Sunday. That hopefully should bring down a good shot of dry air for Sunday night, Monday into Tuesday. And then here comes the next cold front. And then here comes the next cold front. And here comes the next cold front as we run through the next 10 days to 2 weeks. You get the idea, folks. The trend is your friend, so you stick with the pattern the way it is until there's some kind of definite sign that pattern is changing. And it doesn't seem to me like we see anything that's indicating that the pattern is going to change. Hey, Doug Wetzel, thanks for hitting Super Chat twice. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. A cigar for me on the way home. I really do appreciate it greatly when you guys do that. Thank you very much. Izzy D, I don't have any library talks scheduled at the moment. It's summertime, so it's kind of like a downtime for them. And I did so many of them last year that I'm kind of not on the list this year, at least so far. But who knows? Something may come up in the fall. And if any of you are in New Jersey or Long Island or in and around New York City, or perhaps if you're in Westchester County, if you would like me to come out to your local library to give a weather talk, have them contact me. I'm easy to reach and easy to find on Facebook. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Have them find me on Facebook, send me a message, or send me an email, and we'll see if we can put something together. Anywhere else is going to require airfare, okay? And at least to those three areas I can drive to. But if you want me to come down to Maryland or Virginia, I'd be happy to do it, or head up into New Hampshire or to Maine. I'd be happy to do it, but that's car fare stuff, okay? Let's see. Oh God, you guys are already. I know I saw before. Who was it? Let me go. I'll have to go back and find it. But I saw that some of you guys were already talking snow. It's August. Let's wait, please. Okay. Hey, Jason Schaefer's on. Nice to see you. Timothy Veltman. Nice to see you on board. Took a little bit of some time, well-deserved time off. So it's nice to see you back. Yeah, you guys need to stop talking snow. The Joe and Joe show. Yeah, you know what? Being that it's the summertime and both of us have had some odd schedules, and also by the time we get to 9 o'clock, I've been kind of wiped out lately. So we haven't really been doing it. So I think we're probably going to keep the show on hiatus for a little while and just save it for days where the weather is going to be active for the time being. And then we'll try as we get later, maybe as we get later in August when hurricane season really picks up, we'll bring it back on a bit more of a regular basis. But between the two of us, we both have so much to do that it just it becomes tough sometimes to do it every single night. Because I'm doing this live stream, then I'm doing the live stream with Joe. In the morning, I'm doing Weather in 5, and when I can, I do a 10-minute video for Patreon. That's an awful lot. That's an awful lot. On top of the website posts and everything else, and responding to people on social media. So, you know, by the time, and then I'm doing television on top of that. So by the time 9 o'clock in the evening rolls around, I'm like, okay. But when the weather picks up and my energy level picks up, Joe and I, I'm sure, will be jumping on. And by the way, as I said, we did do a 3-minute video earlier while that strong thunderstorm was going on, scaring the daylights out of both of us. Javon Perry, why is it that Andover, Mass. 01810, you don't get these nice severe thunderstorms? All the storms seem to go around you. Well, sometimes you get some pretty good storms up there in New England, but you know what? The further north you go, the harder the setup, the harder it is to get the setup. In the springtime, you've got the issues with the wind coming in off the Atlantic and the marine layer. Now that we're in this part of the summer and the water temperatures have warmed, the marine layer is much less of an influence for you, but you still have to have a pretty solid setup, and it's much more favorable down my way, for example, where we get these dew points that climb up into the middle 70s and temperatures that reached up to the 90-degree mark more than it does further north. So the further north you go, the less with respect to respect to thunderstorms you're going to get, and of course less with respect of severe weather. And I'm not going to issue Izzy a forecast for the fall. Okay, I'm just not going to do it. Long range isn't my thing. The only thing I will say is if this northwest flow pattern continues to hold while we get deeper into August and into September, then you could rest assured that some of those air masses coming down will have some pretty decent shots of cool air with them as they move southeastward. Okay, it's the last day of July. Cranky Weather Guy said that July is the worst month of the year on one of his posts yesterday. And I really do tend to agree with him. Of all the months of the year, July is the one that I really don't like, if only because of the fact that those hot, humid days, the 90-plus days are killer. My second least favorite is probably August for the same reason. And of course, on both months, when you have to deal with the oppressive humidity like we did today, it just makes things so darn uncomfortable, especially at night when you're trying to sleep. All right, so let me just give you a quick update. By the way, the update's been submitted to Google and Apple, so we're just waiting for them. Google usually updates pretty quickly. Apple takes longer. If those of you who have my weather app, expect an update to come as soon as those updates are put through by Google and Apple. The free weather app will now immediately go to your own location when you go to the local forecast page and when you go to the radar. And there'll be a few other minor adjustments, but that's the biggest thing, is the fact that it will go to if you go to local on the local tab. It'll go, instead of defaulting to iSlip where you have to put in your location every time, now it'll just automatically go to whatever your location is, as long as you have the GPS turned on your phone. And there'll be a new app for Angry Ben. For those of you who know Angry Ben's Angry Weather, the new app is his app, and he will be putting his stuff on there so that you could have easy access on your mobile device. So that's been submitted, and hopefully the approvals will come very shortly. As soon as they do, we will definitely let you know. Very quickly, if you are a shopper on Amazon, if you shop on Amazon using this link that I've just put up in the chat, Amazon will throw me a couple of cigars and it won't cost you a cent. We're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated South. So, in other words, if you buy something, not what's necessarily on that link, if you just use the search bar and you go buy something, you get your stuff, Amazon throws me back some coin out of their pocket, and everybody's happy. No storms in South Jersey. Well, you had them in Burlington and Ocean County, Mickey from New Jersey. But this time, I kind of thought, honestly, I really thought there would have been stronger cells further south this time around, based on what I saw yesterday and last night. But it looked like, I'm often amazed how whenever I go in that direction, it winds up being the opposite. But I was openly speculating that I thought the stronger storms would be from Central and South Jersey this time around. Not that there wouldn't be any storms to the north. And earlier this afternoon, it kind of looked like it was going that way. And then all of a sudden, the northern flank just blew up. And the storms were strong across North Jersey and in the Hudson Valley and into southwestern Connecticut. Go figure. And Long Island just got grazed by them. Very, very little happened there. So, one of the things I've noticed, and I've said this many times in the last few weeks, the short-range models, the super short-range models, the mesoscale models that are supposed to handle this stuff really well, are just absolutely awful. So when it comes to these days where you have this risk of severe weather or the risk of thunderstorms, just kind of the approach, I think, should be that if your area is at risk, then expect something to happen. If it doesn't happen, then you're good, because trying to rely on the dependency of short-term models, just follow the radar. Look at what the radar is showing and just follow the radar. You will be far better off than relying on what the models are indicating. All right, folks, we'll live stream again tomorrow night at roughly the same time, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe at 7:30. We'll see. Don't expect much weather going on tomorrow, so we'll probably spend a little bit more time on the tropics, looking at the two storms in the Pacific and this tropical wave in the Atlantic. Have a great rest of your evening. Please travel and stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.